We've been on a bit of a AI hype train over the last couple of episodes. And Ash, today we want to talk about how we can practically apply this and potentially look at how organizations can pilot certain AI tools just to be on the AI hype train like us. You're talking about
Actually, that's a good point. I know I've done a review where
Welcome to the Accountdads, everyone. We are the pod for the finance leaders, the strategizers, thinkers, and the doers. And we've been on a bit of a AI hype train over the last couple of episodes. We've been AI optimists, despite our tech bodies, our governments, and general public sentiment being AI alarmists. And over the last couple of episodes, we've been talking about things like how organizations can adopt AI without, banning tools, how we can increase productivity, encouraging workforce to use them in controlled environments. And Ash, today we want to talk about how we can practically apply this and potentially look at how organizations can pilot certain AI tools just to be on the AI hype train like us. What are you guys using, Ash, in your neck of the woods?
a nice controlled environment of a GPT. So it's amazing. Yeah, they've really taken the initiative and created an environment where you can play safely, create a sort of a sandbox environment, which means effectively you can't go outside into the real world with your GPTs. And it's actually then created a culture of just continuous improvement and innovation and, just being up to date with those skills as well. So I think it's and if you're a larger company that's trying to do stuff, how do you create that environment where you can't really ignore it? We know the AI journey's already taken off, but yet if we ignore it, there's a risk. And if we ban it, there's also a risk. So we end up trying to battle between the two, effectively. And you're really trying to figure out which one's going to lead to some sort of disaster effectively, or you're just trying to kick the can further down the road, in my view.
Yeah. And it's funny, isn't it? Because if you made an omelette and you stuffed up the omelette, you wouldn't blame the device in your hand that made the omelette. You usually blame the human making the omelette. And so it's the same thing with AI, I think, is sometimes when people talk about the risks of AI and things it could do wrong, or when they talk about, how it can be misused, it's usually the humans that sit behind it that need to firstly be trained or need to be taught how to use that well. But mistakes usually happen because they're not using it correctly. Is that a fair statement to say, or do you still see that there's risk that sits outside the human within these AI tools?
No, absolutely. What you just stumbled upon is a great analogy, right? So, is it the egg? Is it you not taking the shell out? As an example, is it you just coming back and saying, "No, I'm going to just chuck the whole egg in. I'm just going to crush it within there for the omelet, and it tastes a bit crunchy. What's going on?" But yeah, you've really got to understand, like you've got a prompt, and your prompting skills have to be up to scratch to really understand what you're asking for. If you come back and say, once again, if you load up the incorrect data or really confidential data and say, "Hey, summarize locations and addresses and birth dates together and everything else," we're running a very dangerous territory. But if you just come back and saying, "Hey, look, I really want you to improve my formulas. I'm trying to run a spreadsheet that's trying to do 6 different lookups. Have you got a better way?" You've then nailed that. And you've got multiple different iterations of how you can actually improve, let's say, spreadsheets or a task or a diagram that you really want to focus on. So it really depends on how you learn this task. And I don't think sometimes you might self-learn it. Absolutely. There is a time and place for that. If you're really trying to get on top of it really quickly, you might need to do a short YouTube course or whatever it is for very little cost or no cost at all. And you can actually get ahead of a lot of these things.
Yeah. And it's good. It's a great point, Ash, because you're talking about essentially where the accountability sits. And like we're saying, it sits with the person utilizing the tool, because either they need to be trained with the tool, they need to be trained in how to use the tool or, judge or validate the tool. But ultimately, it's the same skill as someone Googling. You need to be able to validate the information coming out of it and see how that applies to your work and if it will actually add value to your work in a sense of accuracy and completeness, etc. And I think that's where the ultimate risk is. If people are just blindly trusting it at this day and age, then there's always an issue because companies hire people to make decisions. If companies could just rely on AI tools all the time, then they would do that.
Mm.
But you're in a role and you're a bum on a seat in an organization to be able to sift through that noise from the tool that you're using to then apply that to your work, to add
Yeah.
value to your company. And that's where I think we need to continually train our teams to think about.
Yeah, exactly right. And what you just stumbled upon, it's a tool to use, right? It's not the whole thing, right? So in your toolbox, you've got multiple different options, and like Google's going to be one of them. Reading and research. There's going to be other parts as reading journals and what's industry specific in this case. So, as an example, the accounting and business expo, you'll be learning some stuff there. But
Mm,
at the end of the day, the AI can help you to an extent. Yes, do you need to validate some of the assumptions? Absolutely, right? Do you need to get ahead and maybe say, show me another three different methods to show me? Like, I want to have three different options. I just want to have one option. At least you're
mm,
now sort of starting to hedge what you're looking at, right? You're not just going, oh, give me one option. I'm just going to rely on that and then figure out later, hey, there's a big assumption that got missed. And I didn't validate anything here. And therefore, the model that I built or the forecasts or the budgets all flawed now just because of one single point of failure.
yeah. Would you say, Ash, that the organizations that are a bit more AI mature and AI optimistic were also the ones that are a bit more data mature and data optimistic? So they're the ones that have spent the time over the last couple of years. I'm talking mid to larger organizations here
Yeah.
that have the money and the tools to do this, but they spend money kind of organizing their data, getting them into, you know, a cloud solution or getting them into a structured solution that they can utilize. And then once the AI wave came in, they're now kind of in a position where they can leverage that and take it to the next step.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the companies that have spent their time with the data and really like honed in on the importance of that and structured data, like absolutely makes sense. I think there's still an area where if you're not as advanced or not as mature with your data, can you still utilize AI? Yes, but
Mm,
it's going to be, you got to understand that it's going to be fragmented, and then you've got to then join the dots. And as you're saying, you're employed for your critical thinking, not necessarily for you to just sit there and manually do stuff. But
mm,
there's no one's going to pay you for going, hey, if there's a better and quicker way to do it, let's figure out how we can do it. And that could actually lead you to figure out what your cloud solution may look like, as an example, with data. Because you come back and say, hey, each month I get this export, and these are the series of transformation I do, and I store it in a spreadsheet. And you may just be able to ask, going, is there a better way of doing it? And he may chuck you a series of different responses like, hey, have you utilized Power Query or a database or something else? And this is how you can get a transformation done really quickly. Whereas if you had employed someone and they've not been exposed to that, you're not going to be aware of what's going on, right?
mm. Yeah. And I think as well, it's one of those things where it's actually not too late to adopt despite the situation you're in because of the nature of AI these days. Like people have always thought you can, if your data isn't right, then it's really hard to leverage off it. But I'm seeing businesses now, firstly, utilizing AI to clean up their data so they can get in a state to adopt it. But also B, there's a lot of native environments within big ERPs or big systems or big CRMs that have their own AI capabilities, which they can tap into for them to even just get a taste of what's out there. And I think we're in a unique position as well because most people, I'd say a very high percentage of our population personally use some sort of AI to benefit their own productivity and their own life. And so seeing that helps them think, okay, well, what does this mean for my organization? How can I make my role, my team's role, my organization as output much better? And I think that's the difference between because I don't know if you remember, we're both from the kind of data and reporting world, but when people used to talk about good data and structured data and stuff, it actually didn't mean a lot to the everyday person because
Mm,
they didn't have that taste in their lives. They didn't care about good and structured data.
mm,
Whereas now that you like AI is a whole different stream where they're actually starting to see the benefits in their own lives. And so
mm.
migrating that to a company state takes them to a different place. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, like unless you're a very IT based person that's immersed in data, let's say 10 years ago, having structured data wouldn't have meant something because you could easily plug a spreadsheet and just figure out your own way, right? Just go into the ERP, type a few numbers and use that as your source of truth. But now times have changed. We've got access to thousands, if not millions, of rows of data. Like, how do you utilize that? How do you clean stuff up? How do you even validate some of the assumptions you're trying to use? So it's really interesting how we're like utilizing this. But it comes back down to, can you start your journey at any time? And the answer is yes. You can absolutely start your journey, and that journey then can evolve. And that's the beauty of it, right? Because as a company, you may evolve with AI as a tool in your pocket, rather than a tool that you're staring down right at the end, being like, we don't like you, we don't trust you.
Yeah, that's right. And I want to kind of ask you this question, Ash. So the landscape of artificial intelligence we're in, it's evolving so quickly. Do you think there's a sense of as a business owner or as a finance leader in a company, you don't want to go all in on a tool when in 6 months things could look very different, or you don't want to kind of even, like, you can obviously explore and dabble in things, but you don't want to spend that, 10, 20, 50, 100K implementation investment when in 12 months, in 24 months, things could look very, very different just because of how quickly the landscape is evolving.
So yeah, you've stumbled onto something massive. Yeah, I think and that's what, at the point when you're making significant investment, I think you have to be open to the idea of you switching your AI platforms, right? So, and this happens quite frequently, where right now, as an example, one of the GPTs is quite well known, but in the future it might change to a different company, right? And your ability to pivot between them is what's going to actually create you value, right? Because you're going to be able to plug in one or the other as you see fit to come back and say, no, well, this is the more relevant tool for me now, right? And it's sort of like, if you go back to when we first started our careers, with maybe internet browsers, and over time how we've relied on different things over time and how that's changed. If we're sticking back to the older Internet Explorer, right? Like, which doesn't actually exist anymore, right? So
Yeah.
it's just trying to understand, like, hey, things do change. How are you going to adapt? And if you're a more mature organization with really great data, it should be easier to plug in and play different environments because you're really centering that out. If you're a less mature organization, you can definitely figure out how, hey, like, we can use it for this certain areas, but if we want to really expand and scale this to a really big enterprise solution, like, what's the next steps? And you can obviously have chats with different vendors and see how you can actually structure the best way to get the best value out of that
Yeah.
service for you.
Yeah. Or even the way the landscape's going at the moment is build your own internal tool. Like, I don't know if you saw overnight or over the last week, Salesforce shares have dropped significantly just because of the ability for businesses now to build that capability internally with things like, Claude and stuff. And so it's made the market think, not business haven't reacted yet because Salesforce tie you into big contracts, but it's made the market think, well, if this is what personal productivity is like, if personal productivity means people can just build their own tools for themselves, what does this mean for businesses with these things in the market? So it just makes us think. And yeah, it is a tricky time to be a business leader at the moment, but whatever decisions are made have to be made with conviction. And ultimately, they could be not great decisions made when you look back upon it, but it's really hard to make sometimes a string of right decisions, isn't it? So
Yeah,
that's why the leaders get paid the big bucks.
indeed.
So Ash, I reckon as well for one of these episodes in the future, we should dream of, because just talking about all this stuff made me think about, for a kid they born today, in 18 years' time, what does the accounting profession look like with a host of these tools? Does it exist? And maybe it does exist, but it's called something different. And so I reckon it'll be pretty cool to dream about what that role might look like and where the value chain sits in terms of finance and how that sits across the whole business. Are there hybrid roles going forward? And maybe that's something we can talk about and dream about over a glass or two of whiskey. Cool. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. If you enjoy these types of conversations, we will be at the Accounting and Business Expo in a couple of weeks. We would love to chat to you, but also share some of the things that we're seeing in our spaces. And if you have any other ideas for our podcast, or if you have things that you'd love for us to talk about, shoot us a message. We'd love to talk about it. We'd love to talk to you about it. But more importantly, like and subscribe this video, this channel, and join our Accountdads community of leaders shaping the future of finance, culture, and capability. Have a great week, and we'll catch you on our next episode.